For thousands of years along the west coast of North America, Native Americans have made their living off the land and sea. In a remote village on the furthermost tip of Washington state lies a civilization built upon a spiritual and cultural dependence on the whale. The Makah people revered the whale, which they saw as the embodiment of their tribal traditions. It provided a source of strength for the character building of their youth and created a foundation for moral standards essential to the survival of their culture. The Makah derived power from the control of this vital resource, earning both fear and respect in the tribal community. With the arrival of European settlers, along with the expansion of the United States government in the Pacific Northwest, the Makah tribe was thrust into an unrelenting conflict with the colonialist values of the Europeans. In 1855, the Makah people signed a treaty with territorial governor Isaac Stevens, resulting in the cession of more than 500,000 acres of ancestral lands, the ultimate compromise, in order to retain their right to whale. Stating that the Makah would have the right of taking fish and of whaling or sealing at usual and accustomed grounds and stations, the Treaty of Nia Bay was the only aboriginal treaty with the United States specifically guaranteeing whaling rights. Whaling resides at the very heart of Makah culture. In order to be successful, a whale hunt required deeply spiritual ceremonies and vigorous rituals, calling for a steady devotion of body, mind, and spirit. The Makah believed that conflict would arise only when strict spiritual rituals weren't followed.
We have to walk hand in hand with God, and we have to be totally clean to do this.
At the end of the 19th century, the whaling industry boomed along the northwest coast, leading to the rapid decline of whale populations and setting the precedent for the potential extinction of numerous whale species. As a result of this unrestricted commercial whaling, the Makah voluntarily compromised their whaling tradition in order to preserve what remained of these fragile populations. Their last whale hunt, in 1926, would mark the beginning of an era of cultural disintegration for the Makah people. Without the whale supporting their economy and social structure, the nation would nearly collapse. It would take another 20 years until the world would recognize the need to conserve the dwindling whale populations. In 1946, the International Whaling Commission, or IWC, was created with the intent to regulate international whaling, thus allowing for the orderly development of the whaling industry. In an attempt to place a complete ban on whaling in the United States, the U.S. forged the Marine Mammal Protection Act in 1972. The next year, the Endangered Species Act was created, placing the gray whale among 8 others on the list for protection. This act, combined with the efforts of environmental groups, including Greenpeace, Sea Shepherd, and the Animal Welfare Institute, would successfully lay the foundation for the future recovery of whale populations. In 1966, Dr. Richard Doherty and a team of Makah and other students uncovered 6 longhouses perfectly preserved by a mudslide nearly 500 years previous at the village Ozette. These findings would reignite a passion for whaling that had lain dormant since the 1920s, revealing to even the tribe the central role the whale had held in their society. Harpoon tips and various other tools found at the site would force the public to recognize Makah tradition. The excavation went on for 11 years and produced over 55,000 artifacts and 1,000 whale bones. Ozette discoveries added a wealth of physical evidence to their oral history, confirming accounts of their elders and creating the inevitable tie between past and present. Between 1989 and 1994, the Makah embarked upon a campaign for a return to whaling, culminating in the successful removal of the northeastern Pacific stock of gray whales from the endangered species list. On October 23, 1997, the IWC compromised, granting the Makah people up to 5 whales a year through 2002, after a lapse of 71 years without whaling. On September 21, 1998, the United States Federal Court ruled that the Makah could resume whaling. Preparations began immediately for the pending hunt. Various radical groups, such as PAWS and Sea Shepherd, were outraged, some risking their lives in order to thwart hunting efforts. Despite intense conflict, the Makah endured, and on May 10, 1999, they threw their first harpoon, missing the whale, yet striking hope into the hearts of natives around the world. On May 17, 1999, the Makah killed their first whale since 1926, reliving an experience of old. Widespread rejoicing stretched across the reservation as natives from all over the world took part in the celebration of this revitalization of culture. April through May 2000 marked the second consecutive year the Makah would attempt to whale. Although unsuccessful, the level of protest against whaling remained at an all-time high. On June 9, 2000, a panel of the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals voted to overturn the ruling that had cleared legal obstacles to whaling, saying the environmental impact had not been adequately considered, despite biological studies showing that the gray whale population was at a historical high. As a result, the only whale meat the Makah would taste would be that of a gray whale found washed onto the beach of the Olympic National Park on June 10, 2001. Though protests were many, the majority of the resistance against the Makah was fought out of fear that their whaling would set the precedent for other groups to renew this practice. Others feared that U.S. support of the Makah hunt would weaken efforts to end commercial whaling in other countries. Despite the setbacks, Makah leaders observed lasting positive effects as a direct result of the 1999 hunt, which seemed to spark a cultural renaissance. Young Makah became eager to participate in culture-building activities such as basket weaving, carving, dancing, and studying the native language. It seemed that the return to whaling had indeed achieved the initial aims of the tribe, to revitalize culture. On December 20, 2002, the Ninth Circuit ruled that the tribe had still not adequately addressed the possible consequences for the local gray whale population, despite increasing numbers. Therefore, all hunts would be prohibited until a complete environmental impact statement was prepared, evaluating all possible outcomes. Furthermore, the panel announced that the Makah could not proceed unless the whalers obtained a permit or waiver under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. This stunning ruling shook both the tribe and other experts in Indian law. The act would apply to the Makah, despite the fact that their treaty specifically guaranteed the right to whale. This verdict appeared to conflict with the time-honored principle that Indian treaties take precedence over all general statutes, reigning as the supreme law of the land.
And each time it doesn't seem like our treaty stands alone. It has to be proven again in the court of law, over and over and over. So we sit, waiting, our canoes on the beach, harpoons set aside again while we wait for the legalistic wrangling.
Although frustrated by the U.S. government's new set of standards, the Makah agreed to follow through with their requests. On February 14, 2005, the Makah tribe submitted their formal request for a waiver under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Today, the Northwest Regional Office is still reviewing their request, along with their environmental impact statement, in order to decide whether a waiver should be granted. On September 8, 2007, 5 members of the Makah tribe shot a gray whale without permission from the United States government. The men acted under their conviction that the treaty granted them all the legal protection they needed. Shortly after shooting the whale, the United States Coast Guard intervened, arresting the men and cutting the whale loose, causing it to die after 12 hours, slowly sinking while heading out to sea. Although some Makah feel that the men were justified in their hunt, the tribal council denounced the killing and announced their intention to try the individuals in tribal court. For generations, whaling has defined the Makah among all other tribes living along the northwest coast of the United States and Canada. The whale represented far more than sustenance to the Makah. It was a source of inspiration and strength. So vital, they compromised over 600,000 acres of land to retain their ancestral right to whale.
It's not just a trophy hunt, it's a way of life.
The struggle of the Makah has become representative of the continuous conflict between the government and Indian nations to uphold treaty rights. The colonialist views imposed by the government and various environmental groups would compromise the Makah's independence, suggesting that these institutions know what is best for the Makah nation. The whale hunt of 1999 represented a landmark in the preservation of culture, while instigating a passionate conflict between animal rights activists and the Makah people, who would battle to maintain their sovereignty. Moreover, it would indicate the relentless conflict between the government and the tribe, which was eager to establish a stable method of harvesting a small quota of whales. The story of the Makah is one of great compromise. They gave up their homeland in order to secure their right to whale. Whaling is their lifeblood, and the Makah are ready to resume the role of stewards of the resource. For the Makah, the gray whale is not just a commodity. It is their heritage and right.